Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Chris Lee. Commodore fans, on your feet. It's time to anchor down.
Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. We are presented by Dr. Jody Jones, DDS, and part of the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today will be Luke Wyatt. We will talk about Vanderbilt's basketball loss to Grambling, take your questions in the mailbag, and more. Luke appears on the guest line that is presented by Michael Kendrick of the Kendrick Group. Michael is a local carpenter and a lifelong Vandy fan. He builds bookshelves, cabinets, picture frames, furniture, and other made-to-order items, including a display case for my prized Dale Murphy jersey. I've seen Michael's work. He's a true craftsman. If you're in the market for custom woodwork, call Michael or text him at 615-830-9458. Now, on to our podcast with Luke Wyatt. Luke Wyatt joins us. This is Monday morning. Vanderbilt has lost a basketball game to Grambling State. It's the second time this year. The Commodores have lost a game as a big home favorite. The mood has certainly changed around basketball since the Pitt win. That's what we'll talk about today mostly. Luke, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, and hopefully we can get things turned around again. But that was a devastating blow. I never thought I'd ever see a Vanderbilt team lose to a team from the SWAC.
Well, it's never happened until that.
No, I know. Took 100 years.
The mood around basketball is not good. I don't know how else to put it. The texts and the calls I get, the texts and the phone calls you get.
Yeah.
I'm very curious how this is going to end at the end of the season if things continue to not go well, because I think the chance they could make a coaching change based on what I'm hearing and you're hearing is greater than I would have thought 3 or 4 days ago.
Well, here's what I think you can't do, and Vanderbilt's been infamous for doing this. Waited too long on Derek Mason to pull the trigger. Waited a year too long on Jan Van Bredekov. I can go down through history and tell you where we've waited too long or waited way too long on coaches and administrators. And I can tell you this, I think unless there's a rash of injuries and you don't get Jordan Wright back, let's say Paul Lewis's concussion situation, he's now missed, 7 straight games. If you don't get him back, because Trey Thomas can't be the backup point guard. He can't be. That doesn't work. I just think that there's no way you can defend and say, well, we're still improving. And when you lose Liam Robbins and Jordan Wright after this year, we're going to be better next year. You can't say that. So to me, progress has halted if all those things occur. Now, I will say this. I'm a type of person that I'm not a fire somebody after a horrible loss or, knee-jerk reaction to something. The season should play out, and if we do anything less than a winning season and at least an NIT, then I think there should be something done.
By the way, I want to clarify, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but based on our exchange of texts over the weekend, I asked you, this is what you were hearing about them maybe making a change after the year if it does not go well. That's not opinion. That's based on people you've talked to.
That's based on 3 individuals that I've spoken with. One that's very close to the program, one that's involved in administration, not athletic administration, but university, and the other one's an athletic department employee.
Is it fair to say, well, I know what you're going to answer here because we texted about this, that declining ticket sales for several years in a row is also a factor? And by the way, I've started to hear that from other places too, that the lack of ticket sales and income that comes from that is starting to be really problematic over there, which it's not hard to see if you go to games.
No, and I know part of it has to be the cumulative effect of 4 or 5 straight losing seasons, whatever it is. I think Vanderbilt fans had a lot of pride with their basketball programs, both men and women. We now have crowds for men's games that we used to have for women's games. When Jim Foster was here and in the early Melanie Balcom years, we would have sometimes 3,000 to 5,000 people there for women's games. Now, that's what we have for a men's game against a quality opponent like Pitt. When Barry Goheen and those guys that were honored the other night, Will and that group from '88, if they'd have played Pitt, if you go back in time and they played Pitt, there would have been 11,000, 12,000 people in the gym, maybe sold out. So, and I know, different time, Titans, Predators, all that, but there's more to it than Titans and Predators, a lot more to it.
Well, and the women's crowds are probably comparable to something you'd see if I went over to watch Centennial High School's women, or at least it was till Shea Ralph got here. I don't know if that's changed a lot, but there's that also.
No, I don't think it's changed much at all. I think they sold maybe 1,000 to 1,500 corporate tickets, which maybe half of those are used. So you're averaging 500 to 700 people a game. That's when you get into conference, probably. These non-conference games, you're not getting anything. And we talked about it a little bit. There's things you can do to put people in that gym, and I don't know whether it's pride or just not wanting to work, but you can go to Lipscomb, Tribeca, and Belmont, and at least put a few people in there that'll cheer for you. I don't understand why they don't care, but it seems like they just don't care.
Well, and I think you've got a lot of people, and again, this is me paraphrasing kind of some things that you sent me in Texas weekend, but I just think the whole fed up with everything has got a lot of people withholding support until they see progress in certain places. I don't know how you would want to phrase it, and so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'll let you just kind of take that thought from there.
Well, yeah, I think the last 4 or 5 years, your two major sports, football and basketball, and I'll throw women's basketball in there too, has been putrid. Football made progress this year. It ended on a sour note, but that didn't surprise me that much because Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama is what it is. We're not even close to that. And if you're any type of Vanderbilt fan, you realize we're not close to that yet, and that's understandable. But we were playing on the last weekend of the season for a bowl, so there was progress in football. But where else have we seen progress? Last year, men's basketball ended on what I thought was a good note. They played well in the NIT, could have easily gotten to New York, missed it by a few points, and that's fine. I thought we were on track. But when you come out and you hear these comments, and I don't know Coach Stackhouse well at all. I've said hello to him, and that's it. But I can tell you this. When I hear post-game comments of like, well, we're trying to make sure we get better as the year goes on, and we use these games to get better. Yeah, but you know what? You got to win some of them. You can't lose to Grambling. And I know Southern Miss is 9-1 now, but you shouldn't lose on your home floor to Southern Miss. When you're a 10 to 14-point favorite, you can't lose those games. You could lose one maybe in a season, but to lose two within a 10-game span, no.
Yeah, and I mean, that was a strange thing about being at that Memphis press conference, because I was at one of his media availabilities a couple days before that, and it's like building our resume for the postseason, and all of a sudden, like that night, it's like, well, I think he might even refer to them as preseason games, which is not the correct term, but all of a sudden it went from, hey, this is building our resume to, hey, this is the pre-conference portion, which was just a really, that's how I took it. That might be unfair, but that was a really odd left turn at that point.
Yeah, I get the feeling, and it's the first coach that's been at Vanderbilt that I felt this way about. He views the preseason as an exhibition season. Well, it's not. These wins and losses count. And, I don't understand how in the world, when we've got full 13 scholarships, now, when you got a couple guys hurt, I get it. But why are we having to play walk-ons at times right now? There's no reason for that. There's no way in the world you can convince me. I know maybe the kid's busting his butt and earns it in practice, but if you don't have scholarship guys that are better than that, then you better look in the mirror, because this is your class. To me, this is Jerry Stackhouse's team. So I judge him harshly this year.
Well, I just think that's the case. The culture over there is not competitive. And I think Jerry's a competitive person, but when you're in and around that all the time, is it fair to ask, does that take an effect?
Yeah, and you're right. Jerry Stackhouse was a good NBA player. He's tough as nails, and I'm sure he hates losing. I mean, no one wants to lose. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, are you putting in the work? Or, Will made a very good comment, and this is the defense a little bit of Jerry. Will made a comment on his podcast with you about this is a trap game because of the exam, and we always have said that. The exam game has always been a tough game. Whether we're playing a good team or a bad team, it's always a close game. We've lost some of them. I get that. But when you had just come off a good win and put yourself back on track to kind of be where you should be in the preseason, then you turn around and give it right back by losing the game. So we take one step forward and take 1.5 to 2 steps back. And there's no reason for that. It's not like we're a young basketball team. I heard him say that. We're not a young basketball team. Our depth is young, but we've got plenty of basketball minutes on that floor. And it shouldn't be that way. Those kids are mature enough to understand what it takes to beat Grambling or what it takes to beat Southern Miss. I don't buy that.
So you think they could make a change if they don't make postseason? I just want to be clear on what you think might happen if this does not go well.
It's all about perception. If we go, all right, we're going to play 31 games regardless. We're going to play 32 games regardless because we're going to play one in the tournament, SEC tournament. So in 32 games, if we go 15-17, but we win 4 of our last 5, then everyone's like, oh, we're getting better. It was too late, but we got better. See, I'm not that type of person. I'm not going to predict that there will be a change made, but in my book, I would make the change. I'll harken back to 1981 when Richard Schmidt was our coach, and everyone saw that it was not a good hire. Rory Kramer, we beat Kentucky in the SEC tournament, and Richard Schmidt thought he was being called into the office the next week to get a raise or a contract extension, and Rory Kramer fired him. That's when you have to have an athletic director and a chancellor that say, hey, we get this, Jerry, we appreciate your efforts, but it ain't working. We're going into year 5 now, and you're getting ready to lose Liam Robbins, Jordan Wright, and probably others, and there's no way we're going to be better next year. There's no way, unless we get some 5-star transfers or something. So to me, yeah, you have every reason to reboot.
I want to hear your thoughts on this. I don't think the chancellor was super impressed with him his first year. I do think that the off-court stuff probably played a little bit of a factor in that. To Jerry's credit, he knocked all that stuff off last year, and they had a pretty nice season. Missed the NIT or missed the NCAA. Maybe you could argue that with a little bit more health, they sneak in. I don't know what the right side is, but I think that's the fair argument. I think you have to acknowledge that was part of it. But the thing about losing to Grambling, it's not about one loss. It's about the body of work. I mean, he's 13-39 in the SEC. I think that's the worst mark of any Vanderbilt coach ever. The overall winning percentage is probably close to that since World War II. And I get that wasn't the best of circumstances, having gone winless the year before. But Bryce did leave him several NBA play. And look, Bryce, had that number been anything but a 0 in terms of wins, I think even if it's 2 or 3, everybody would have viewed that different. And frankly, they should have had a couple of wins that year. And that's on Bryce. I'm not saying it's not. But the point I'm making here is you can't set a bar of expectations any lower than 0. I think that when you have a team that's beat down. I think that's something, and Jerry had a job to do, but also I don't think that you could have set the bar any lower in terms of the backdrop that he came in against. And you start looking at some of these kids that have moved on and played ball, and I think it's fair to ask, shouldn't there be more than 13 SEC wins at this point?
Well, I get what you're saying. I don't look at that because, like you said, coming off an 0-18, and I've said before, I've defended Clark Lee in football after coming off the debacle of Derek Mason's last 2 years, is why the first year of Clark looked so poor. So, I guess we won, three, Jerry's first year, 3 conference games. Is that correct? With no talent, with not very little talent then. Max Evans was a leading scorer several times. So, and I love Max, but if he's your leading scorer on certain nights, you're not very good. I just don't. I don't think the 13-39 bothers me as much as there is not a sense of urgency to me. When we get a win, it's like it's the greatest thing in the world. And if we lose a game, oh well, we're trying to build toward the end of the season. We should not be sitting here at 5-5 right now. This team is a 7-3 basketball team, even with its inconsistencies. They have enough talent on their roster that if you show up, have a good game plan, play well, play hard, you should win. You should have won 7 of these first 10. And I get injuries, I get all that. Everybody's got them.
Yeah, they do. And that's the other thing is that, I feel like you see more injuries in college basketball now than you did before. They're not the only team that's been beset by some of those. Now, look, theirs seem to disproportionately happen to their better players, and Jerry has certainly been the victim of that. You can't have a fair discussion about this without mentioning it. But my issues are kind of elsewhere, too. You go back and look at the players he's brought in and how many of them have just been absolute busts. I mean, he brought in 7 guys last year. 6 of them were gone.
Yeah. I
mean, what? And if you want to play the hand he was dealt, not being very good, really, he's only brought in 3 guys in my mind that can play at this level, 3 or 4. But it depends on where your bar is. Okay, no doubt in my mind, Liam Robbins is a really good player. And, of course, Liam Robbins was also brought in by Ed Conroy, who's no longer on the staff. Pippen, Jerry gets some credit there because players did have a choice to come or not come once the coaching change was made, and Scotty did come, although I don't know what the other offers might have been at that point. That was a miss by the analysts, to be honest. I think Scotty was a better player than he was probably given credit for. But point is, you start looking at guys he's brought in that can play at this level. I'm thinking of guys like, if you say the top 5 teams in this league right now, let's go Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Arkansas, Kentucky. I don't know that there's anybody on this roster that would be playing minutes, and by minutes I mean even 5, other than Liam Robbins.
The only other one I would even come close to, because he can shoot the ball, is Studi, because he would play in situational against zone.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Yeah,
that's the only other one I could see, just because of the situations. But I agree with that. I agree with, and there's no way you should be in that situation, because I want to look at, when we talk in terms of is it fair or not to give Jerry another year. Here's the way I look at that. We don't know who he could get out of the portal. We know who the 3 recruits are that are coming in. But are we, without Liam Robbins and let's say Jordan Wright and a couple of others, are we going to be any better next year? How can you say that we would be? That's the reason why I look at that.
Well, and I'm stalling for time here a little bit because I'm trying to do the math that I should have done before the pod that I meant to do, but ran out of time. But okay, I think I've got it now. Yeah, I mean, the point is that the thing, his evaluations have been awful. I mean, there's just no way around it. And that's what worries me. Like, what does he become a much better talent evaluator between now and the next year than he is now? I mean, I think that's the case you have to make.
Well, I've seen 2 of the 3 kids coming in play. A friend of mine is from Indiana, and his high school, he's the athletic director and coach up there. And I watched the kid, his name's, I think is it Jaquan Rob? I can't remember his last name.
Jaqueline, I think, yeah. Roberts.
Yeah. Anyway, watched him. He's very athletic, again, very athletic. Quick twitch kid, can do some things. Shot the basketball horribly in the game I watched him play. Now, that's a 1-game sample. I get that. But athletically, yeah, he's SEC caliber athlete. But show me on our team, besides Miles Studi, the kids that we used to have, the Barry Bookers, the Scott Drouds, the Barry Gohings, who can just fill it up. When you need a basket, can hit a 3. We don't really have that. Trey Thomas is the second guy that you look to for 3s, but Trey's limited because of his size, and he's not quick. When you're that small, you better be ultra quick, and he's not. It's just very disturbing to me, that, and I don't know that if he made this comment, I don't want to hold Jerry to this, but I seem like I remember him comparing Trey Thomas to Allen Iverson.
Yeah, he did. No, I don't think that was meant to be exact. I don't know what that was about. I think their evals just have not been good, man. And that's the thing I've said. I said even before the season, and this is going to sound like it's talking out of both sides of your mouth, but the analysts missed 2 on guys. And the thing that I kept hearing, and I said, I'm not taking a stance on this. I'm just going to tell you both sides. The recruiting class was ranked in the top 25, but I was hearing for some people in the basketball community whispers that class was not as good as it was hyped to be. And let me just give you some numbers on their freshman class so far. And I get that Lewis has been hurt for 7 games, but Paul Lewis has also scored 3 points in 30 minutes. Here are the numbers on their freshman class. They've played 316 minutes so far. They've got an effective field goal percentage of 47%. That's allowing for the 3. That's not good. They pulled 63 boards, 14 assists, 17 turnovers, 80 points. So 10 games in, the freshman class is averaging, between the 5 of them, 6.3 boards, 8.0 points. That's, again, between the 5 of them. More turnovers than assists, and a field goal percentage that's unacceptable. Now, I think if they're having a hard season and they're lighting it on fire, then it's like, okay, maybe that's a little bit of different conversation, especially if you like the class coming in next year. And I hear fans saying, well, the highly rated freshman class, blah, blah, blah. Ratings start to go out the window the minute you get to campus. And I get that freshmen get better and improve, and at Vanderbilt, that's usually a longer haul. But, I mean, you look at the freshmen that have come in lately in the last few years, like Saban Lee, you knew right away he was a player. Aaron Neesmith knew he was a player. Darius Garland certainly knew he was a player. Scottie Pippen Jr. averaged double digits right away. You have opportunities on these teams. It's not like these kids are being crowded out by kids who are just lighting it up. Now, Colin Smith, I think, can play. But to me, none of the others have really shown you much. I know, Dort has impressed some people at times with swatting a ball in the stands, but he scored 7 points. He's got 6 turnovers to an assist, and he's blocked 7 shots. I mean, I know there's some stuff there, but, he should be playing more than 44 minutes on this team if he's that good. This season of the Vandy Sports Podcast has been made possible by my friend Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. When it comes to general or cosmetic dentistry services, Jody is the best in Nashville. Just check out his client list. It testifies to that. He sees movie stars, music stars, athletes, coaches, you name it. Jody is the dentist of choice for stars in Nashville, but he sees regular folks like you and I as well. What people love about Jody's office is the ambiance. It's relaxing, it's friendly. Someone described it to me as a tooth spa. Whether your needs are general or cosmetic, go see Jody today. Call him 615-270-2322. See him at 55 Music Square East, not far from downtown or the Vanderbilt campus. Jody is a former Vanderbilt football player and a huge Commodore booster, so go and talk Vandy sports with him while you're there. Go see Jody Jones today. Thank him for his support of this podcast, because without it, this season would not be possible.
Well, I first of all, I'll agree with you with Colin Smith. I'll disagree with you on Paul Lewis. I saw enough of Paul Lewis to realize that he would be a very good backup point guard for us.
Yeah.
I've watched Paul Lewis shoot, and he can shoot. We just hadn't had enough samples. He ain't been out there enough. Okay, so those two I'm good with. I think Lee Dort is defensively will be fine. Lee and Malik, to me, right now, don't have a clue what they're doing on the offensive end. And what's going on with Noah Shelby, I have no idea. He doesn't even see the floor. He doesn't get in games most of the time. And he was supposed to be the best shooter of them all, I was told. I know the kid coming in from Good Pastures is a really good player, Isaiah West. I know he is. He's a good basketball player. But again, are we going to be better next year with what's coming in and what's leaving? We need to take advantage of having Liam Robbins, a hardworking guy like Quentin Malloy-Brown, who I know offensively doesn't give us much, but he does a lot of intangible things that I like about him. We have to be better than a losing record this year. We have to be at very worst an NIT team. We need to be 16-14 or 17-14. And to do that, that means we first of all have to beat NC State, then win the next two non-conference. That puts you at 8-5. Then you're going to have to go 8-10 or 9-9 in conference. Now, I will say this, Chris, and this is getting off a little bit what we've been talking about, but I watched Missouri get absolutely blown out of their own gym by Kansas. I know Kansas is a top 20 team, but they're not a great Kansas team. They're a good Kansas team. I watched most everybody else in the SEC except Tennessee got beat by Colorado, who also Grambling beat Colorado, so you can do stuff like that all day long. So there's teams out there that you're going to beat possibly that, on paper you say we have no chance to win. The best team in the SEC to me is Alabama.
Yes.
Not just because they beat Houston, but I think they beat two number ones, two teams that were number one at the time. And I think watching them, they have potentially the best team, and I think they are the best team. Auburn got, the Auburn-Memphis comparison. I said when we played Memphis, that's because of how old they are and that point guard, that they're going to be a top 25 team, and they're going to be a team that could get to the Elite Eight. And I still believe that. They handled Auburn the other night in front of basically a home Auburn crowd. So, the SEC's not great. There's three really, really good teams.
I disagree. I think the league is really good. I think it's really good.
We'll find out, but how many teams would you say right now will make not right now, but when we get through with the season, how many do you think will make the NCAA?
Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Mississippi State. And I think, so that's 6. And I think probably 1 or 2 of Missouri, LSU. A&M and Florida have not been anything like what I thought they'd be, but I wouldn't count them out. Buzz Williams' teams always get a lot better from January on. So the computers, Ken Palm's got A&M at 57 this morning. He's got Florida at 55. Florida can't beat anybody. The computers like them. Castleton's a really good player, but I think teams have started to figure out that they don't have an elite supporting cast around him. That their guards at times can be erratic. I don't know. I think to me right now, I mean, Kentucky, Tennessee, Bama, Arkansas, Auburn are going. State's unbeaten and has beaten a couple of good teams. That's an old team, I think. State's going to. Ole Miss was the team I left out. Ole Miss has got a shot. Ole Miss has got a couple of quality wins. I wouldn't be surprised if you see 8 teams in the NCAA tournament. If I had to put a number on it, an over-under, I'd probably go 7 right now. And I think where Vandy stands, I think the worst 3 teams in the league are Vandy, Georgia, South Carolina, probably in that order, Vandy being 12, and then a pretty significant gap between 12 and 11. I know Missouri got its doors blown off the other night, but that team's got a lot of kids who can score and a coach who I think is just fantastic.
Well, and that's where we differ, because I've seen Missouri play now 4 times. And offensively, yeah, they can put it in the hole.
Oh, defensively, they give it up. There's no doubt about that. But they've got like 8 or 9 guys that average 9 points or more. And Dennis Gates, look up his story. I mean, if you talk, I know we have seen some dumpster fires at Vanderbilt, but the one that he took over at Cleveland State for Dennis Felton, he literally had no scholarship players on his team when he took the team over in that summer. And they ended up being respectable, and I think he was coach of the year in that conference in year 2.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is I think the SEC will only get 6 teams. I think the 5 you talk about every time, yes. And I guess Mississippi State would be the 6th. There's no way in my mind that a Missouri or an Ole Miss will get in. I don't see it. I don't see it at all. Because Missouri's wins, I don't know how many quad 1 wins. Do they have any quad 1 wins yet?
Wichita State might be, and that was on the road. I mean, look, they played an awful schedule.
Yeah,
but I mean, some of the transfers they had have also done stuff at some other places too. I mean, I think. Oh goodness gracious! And Gates spent a lot of his time trying to send messages to kids too to get them bought in. Is it Demoy Hodge? It was player of the year in a league. I can't remember which one. He has so many transfers. I confuse them at times. Nick Honor played a lot at Clemson. Like I said, they got shredded by Kansas and looked awful, and I'm not defending that, but I'm just a big believer in Dennis Gates.
Okay, let's go back to the Vanderbilt thing. If let's say that you're correct, that there's 8 SEC teams that get in the NCAA, or 7.
I'd say 7. I'd say 7. Yeah.
Okay, if you say 7, that means half the league is either going to go to NIT or CBI or nothing. So where do we fit in there? And to me, we should be at least that 8th, 9th, 10th in one of those 3 categories. We shouldn't be in year 4. 11 to 14. That's my argument of keeping or getting ready your coach. I think that's where we should be.
Well, and I think you've got it. And we're talking 2 different things, right? Where they are and where they should be. From what I hear, I think the chancellor shares the point of view that should be an upper half of the SEC program, that NCAA tournament. Like I think he's very well aware, from what I understand, of their history and tradition, and that basketball has kind of been their bread and butter sport, and they've done some good things. And I think, look, it wasn't that long ago that Kevin Stallings got fired for going to the NCAA tournament. And I look back, and I was probably too hard on Kevin, but if you were also there at the time and watching it, and you heard the grumbling, and the expectation was, hey, this team should not only be in the NCAA tournament, but it should be winning games. And that's where the bar was at that time. And that's what the former players felt. And from what I remember hearing at the time, pressure by former players carried a lot of weight at the time with David Williams. And I don't think that you have got a group of former basketball players that's real bought in on the program right now, and frankly on the athletic department in general.
To me, and I go back a long way with Vanderbilt basketball. I was 10 years old, so I was 50 years of Vanderbilt basketball. Vanderbilt basketball, Kentucky Tennessee, and Arkansas are the only three programs that really have played better than Vanderbilt basketball historically. Alabama and Florida.
Alabama would be in that group too. Alabama's got a better record than people think. But carry on.
But what I'm saying is Alabama and Florida, we are 71 and 73 historically against them. So we've held our own with Alabama and Florida. All the other teams, we are ahead just about all the other teams, except for maybe South Carolina. I think we're really close with them. Like we're 30 and 40 games ahead of an Ole Miss, a Mississippi State, an Auburn, a Georgia. It's not even close. Vanderbilt's like 80 and 40 against those type of teams. It's not really close. LSU's fairly close. But there's only three teams in the SEC that have accomplished a whole lot more than Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's been to one Elite Eight. Tennessee's been to one Elite Eight. Arkansas, Kentucky have been to Final Fours. And then Florida, they were one of the worst teams. When I first started watching Vanderbilt basketball, Florida was horrible.
Florida's history is mostly Billy Donovan, although Norm Sloan did some good things there too. Yeah.
You're right. So historically, Vanderbilt absolutely should be in the upper half. At very minimum, they should be in the upper half. Now, Vanderbilt isn't Duke. I've heard that says Vanderbilt should be Duke. No, look. If you say that, then why shouldn't every school that's like Vanderbilt baseball, why shouldn't Wake Forest be Vanderbilt baseball? You can't say that. We hit on a great coach with Tim Corbin. Duke hit on a great coach with Mike Krzyzewski, and it all got started. So you can't really say Vanderbilt should be Duke. But Vanderbilt in the Southeastern Conference in basketball should definitely be in the top 7 year in, year out, and should be an NCAA team once every 3 years. At bare minimum.
Yeah, and I think, is it fair to say the chancellor's going to hold the trump card in all this?
It has to be. If he's not, then what are we talking about for? It doesn't matter anymore. If that's the case, then we are still sitting here spinning our wheels in the mud, and it's the same old, same old. And I don't think it is. Again, I love Daniel Dearmeyer. I think he holds the key to everything. I'm not blaming Candace Lee. I'm not blaming anybody else in that athletic department right now for our shortcomings. Either get on board with what Daniel Dearmeyer wants or get out the door. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. There was a comment there and I lost it. But, yeah, I know there's been a lot of talk about the contract and everything, and I've tried to find out details for sure. I just can't, including the buyout. It's not been a very fruitful search. I've not given up, but it does seem to be most of what I hear is that the extension that Candace gave him, the sentiment is that was more window dressing than prohibitive should they choose to move on after this year. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, I think so. And Chris, let's say, again, let me go back to the way I feel. I feel, again, we got to wait till the end of the season. Where I'm coming from today is where we sit today, okay? We played 10 games. In my opinion, we should be 7-3. We lost to Grambling, who we should never lose to. I don't care. We play them 100 times. You should beat them 99.5 times. Vanderbilt basketball, when we get through at the end of the season, if it's not setting in an NIT at least, then we need to move on because it's been 4 years and the progress would be, to me, null and void. There hasn't been any, not to the extent that it should be. It really hasn't. Last year, we were where we should have been. We were on schedule when we beat Pitt, and then 48 hours later, we come out with zero effort, fall behind a team 10-0, and show no energy, turn the ball over a ton. To me, that's coaching, and that's all it is coaching.
Yeah, and I think they play hard for him. I do think he's got some, he's renowned for it. But, I mean, I just think it's his talent evaluation. He's just not very good at it. And I don't think you can just fix that overnight. I still question the effort they put in. I've got my reasons for that. I'm not going to go public with those right now. But that's the part to me that he just – has not shown any ability to solve, and I don't see that getting a lot better.
Let me ask you this. Let me scenario a little bit here. Let's say we win the last three. Say we beat NC State, which they've kind of fallen on hard times a little bit. Their last couple of games, they lost to Pitt, who we beat, and they lost to somebody else the other day. They're like 8-3 or 7-4. So if we beat NC State, win the other two, and we enter conference play 8-5. Okay, then we do go. Let's say we go 9-9, and we are playing for an NCAA tournament bid when we go to the SEC tournament. What do you think should happen?
Oh, then I think he comes back. Look, if you go 9-9 in this league, then you've done something. Again, and some of that is a difference of opinion. I think the league is better than you think it is. I'm sitting here looking at Ken Pom right now. Ken Pom has got them going 5-13 in the SEC. And by the way, I think there's still some preseason bias baked into this. They were, what was it, 60? Let me pull this up.
68.
They were 66 preseason. So they are 99 today. And I think a little bit that includes a forecast that to me looks like was optimistic. So if they're 99 now, they're probably a little less than that. And again, that would be baked into the predictions too. And so Ken Pom has got them beating South Carolina. Those are the only two games in which they are favored individually in conference play. So if you go straight up win and losses, Ken Pom's got him 2-16 in the league. If you go sum of all the probabilities, which means that if you got a 45% chance to lose, over time, you win some of those where you're underdogs. That's where that 5-13 comes in, if that makes sense. And by the way, they are a 4-point underdog to NC State and Chicago this coming Saturday, which it wouldn't shock me if they win that game. It would not shock me if they were to win their last four out of conference. I would say, oh, you're right. They've got three. So that's 8-5. Okay, let's game this a little bit. They'd be 8-5 in the league. So they would have to do what to get to 500? 7-11 wouldn't get them there, barring winning two games in the SEC tournament.
Right.
Yeah. 8-10 would have to be it.
You'd be 16-15. Now, if you win one in the tournament, you should get an NIT with a 17-16 mark. So 8-10 could get you in if you go 8-5 the non-conference. But the other thing, Chris, we don't really take into, and we look at the stats, we look at the analytics and all that. Who knows who's going to get thrown off of somebody's team? Who knows who's going to get hurt?
Yeah.
Who knows who's going to get in trouble, like we just saw with Chris Beard at Texas? You don't know. There's so many other factors that are going to play out in these next 2 months. So I'm not on here today to say. I'm saying at this point where we are today, does Jerry Stackhouse deserve to be back? No. I hope he proves me wrong and we're sitting in the NCAA tournament or no worse than the NIT in about 2 months. But if he's not, then the pressure, Dearmeyer and whoever else is going to make this decision needs to make it, because we historically have sat on coaches too long, and not just in basketball.
And they don't need to make a move in season unless there's like another outburst or something. So
no, we don't. No,
that wouldn't be fair to the kids either. Look, I mean, if he goes 9-9 in the league, then absolutely you bring him back. That to me makes up for some of the losses. Southern Miss, Grambling, that because you're winning at that point a bunch of games that you shouldn't be winning. But I do think that's where year 5 has to be it's NCAA tournament or bust, and I don't really care what the circumstances are. Maybe nobody's picking you go to the NCAA, but that's kind of because of the foundation you built to the house too.
I agree with that 100%. I agree with that. But and making a football reference here, our Ken Pom, which is basically the same thing as what Vegas put out, that we were a 2.5 win team in football. Well, we overachieved there too. We won 2 games in the SEC that we were not favored in. So it happens. It just does.
Well, and to his credit, they generally start playing their best ball from about mid-February on. The place in their schedule where they could start making some hay, they got Florida and Gainesville on the 11th of February, South Carolina and Columbia. I think they can win that one on the road. I don't think South Carolina is very good. They've got Auburn here. Well, frankly, I'm trying to play out an optimistic scenario and string 3 or 4 games together, and it's not easy. I guess the best stretch here would be at A&M, which I don't think is as good as. Okay, well, let's start earlier. Okay, January 21st at Georgia. They got a shot in that one. January the 28th at A&M. If A&M doesn't get a lot better than it is, I think that's winnable, although that is absolutely applicable for Vanderbilt too, but I'm trying to be optimistic here. Ole Miss at home, February 4th, winnable. Florida, February 11th on the road, winnable, potentially. I'm stretching this a little bit for the purpose of the exercise. South Carolina, February the 14th, on the road, very winnable. That is where they're going to have to make. And by the way, you better beat South Carolina for the home opener on January 3rd, which I think that was a home opener last year and they lost. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, or it was close to it.
2 points.
That's one. That's one. I think these next 5 games are really crucial if they're going to do anything like that. Next 4.
Well, pardon the pun, but stacking wins has been an issue with Coach Stackhouse in his program. In other words, last year we opened the season by winning at Arkansas. Come home, everybody's fired up, and then you lay an egg against South Carolina. That's what he's got to get. That's the mountain he's got to climb, and with his team. And there again, whether it's talent or whatever it may be, you can't just win a good game, play good one day, and the next day come out there and roll the ball out and play. And I will say this, and I may be wrong. I think the thing that's really bothered me the most about the Grambling game, our preparation seemed poor. It just did. And I may be wrong. I don't want to say that one of the coaches didn't do his job with his scout, or maybe we didn't scout him and we just rolled the ball out there and played. I don't know, because it was such a short turnaround. But I just felt like that team wanted it so much more than we did. It wasn't even funny. Every loose ball they got. And if I wish I could do a frame of it, there was one play in that game when we have the ball, it's bouncing right to us. All we got to do is just take one step to get it, and we let one of their guys dive in front of us and steal it, and they get a dunk. I'm sorry, that's effort, that's coaching, that's preparation. Can't happen against the Grambling. It can't.
Yeah, I think the SWAC is generally one of the 2 worst conferences year in and year out in the league. Now, I do think Dante Jackson's done a pretty good job there for them, but we're splitting hairs. If we're even talking about justifying a loss to Grambling, then it's a bad spot.
There's no justification in losing to Grambling. I don't care if they've got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in his prime. Look, there's 36 conferences. The last I looked in the country in Division I basketball.
31, I think.
We have we have a winning record against all but like 5 of them. Yeah, and we've got 4 or 5 that we've never lost a game to. And SWAC was one of them. We were 13-0 coming in. So it can't happen. There's certain things that just can't happen, and that it just lost a lot of. And I'm sure Jerry felt that too. If he was honest with everybody, he probably wants to kick himself in the butt, realizing, well, how did we lose to this basketball team? Look yourself in the mirror. Take the blame for it.
Well, it didn't go unnoted by the fan base that Grand Canyon, which is where Bryce Drew is, beat this team 81-48 back on November the 18th.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I'm the world's worst at comparing scores. This team also beat Colorado, which beat Tennessee. So does that really matter? No.
Right. No, the early season comparison game leads you to some strange places. I mean, and they also beat, well, no, Texas San Antonio is awful. But they did beat them 20 points on the road. Again, if we were at this point where we've gone from, Kevin Stallings not winning a game in the NCAA tournament gets him fired, 6 years ago or whatever it's been, or 7, to we're trying to figure out how maybe losing to Grambling even isn't as bad as maybe it looks, and that says everything about where the program is. So
it does. We got 30 more or 20 more.
Are you ready for the mailbag?
I'd love to. Let's do it.
Okay. As soon as I find my read, we'll get there. Mondays are crazy. Okay. Our mailbag is sponsored by Sutherland & Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call, 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. Okay, this one is football-related, I believe. DoorFan6 asks, with a lot of good players coming back, I've changed my expectations for next year in a good way. When's the last time the roster has been this good?
We're talking football, I assume.
Yeah, and to be clear, we don't know exactly what the roster is going to be yet. But although we're getting a better idea, Ray Davis won't be part of it. I would presume that if Shepard or Swan or some of those guys were going to be in the portal, we might have seen that by now. I guess we're getting close. I mean, commitments are filing in. You typically lose one or two of those, but you'll gain some. The recruiting is, according to Rivals, I think the class is at 32 last time I looked. So, but I don't know how many of those kids are going to help. I mean, we talked about freshmen having a shot to help, in the defensive backfield, and that didn't happen at all with the exception of one. So I'll stop rambling now and just let you answer the question about that.
I think this, Chris. I think, this year we were 5-7. I think you're looking at these kids always say, let's run it back. I think that's what you're looking at next year is 5-7 to 6-6. I think we'll be either playing Tennessee with 5 wins or playing Tennessee already having 6 wins. I think that's where we'll be. Anything better than that is great. It should be coach of the year. Now, again, that always goes without saying that if you don't get a ton of injuries and all that type of thing. But just looking at the schedule, looking where we've improved, and where our depth is getting a little bit better, how much I think we have got to hold on to A.J. Blazik. I think he's a terrific coach, along with Larry Black. I think he's a terrific coach and several others. But where we've improved, I think we're looking at 5-7, 6-6.
What's your feeling on how effective and active they'll be in the transfer portal? I guess the second more important than the first.
I think activity will come from people that had left, or in other words, positions of need only. I think we'll be incredibly selective. I know you probably know more about this stuff than I do. Getting some guys from the Ivy League that can play, because there are kids that can play in that league. Finding a corner that can play, a rush in that can play, but it's not going to be a big number. It's always going to be in that 5 to 7 range, in my opinion, of what we do in the portal.
Yeah, and I won't share specifics here, but I've talked to Clark Lee off the record about this a little bit, and their priority is going to be developing their kids and giving them a chance. In other words, if you come in, work hard for a couple years, you don't get your opportunity, we're not going to undercut you by bringing in a transfer, and discouraging our kids like that. I think that's the way they're approaching it. I know people have an issue with it, but I do think long term that's better for the culture and morale of the program, and that probably keeps kids out of the portal that can help you down the line from jumping in before you've got a chance to develop them and see what that looks like.
No, I agree. And he said that's his approach since he walked in the door. And he knows that he's going to have to do that. That's the only way you're successful at a school like Vanderbilt in today's era.
Okay, let's see what's next. DFW Mark, who are some of your favorite assistant coaches that have ever been at Vandy? He didn't specify by sports, so I'll just let you answer that as you please.
Robbie Caldwell in football jumps right out at me. In fact, all of Bobby Johnson's staff I really cared about. Steve Crosby, Jamie Bryant. I can name a ton of them that I still keep in touch with. So I don't necessarily have a favorite. I probably talk to and do more with Robbie Caldwell than any of them. And in basketball, I loved Ed Martin. Ed Martin was, he and I talked probably every day when he was at Vanderbilt. Ed was a tremendous person. John Bostic, Mike Petroni. I loved Rick Callahan, who was on Eddie Fogler's staff. Sheer entertainment was the way I'd describe Rick Callahan. There's a ton of them. Rob Bargatze, love him still. So there's a ton of them. And then baseball, Gary Burns, a pitching coach who was there for Coach Mewburn and Coach Mewburn. And then, of course, obviously Tim Corbin and his staff.
Did you like David Turner from Bobby Johnson's old staff?
Like him?
Yeah.
How can I say this diplomatically? He went to the beat of his own drum. I'll just say that.
I always kind of liked him. I thought he was pretty wickedly funny at times. But
every day, you got to live with him every day.
Yeah, I get it. There was a reason I asked that question, but
let me just say this: if I hear one more time, it's a game day game day, men. Get your gear on, get your battle gear on. If I hear that one more time, that's one too many.
Oh man, I don't even want to know what you thought about all the Masonisms.
So that's okay. I don't even want to talk about that.
Right.
I really don't.
All right. Moving along now. All right. Ann Arbor Door, what's your best behind-the-scenes Coach Woody story?
Oh, I love it. Now, listen, there's probably 50 I could share that I can't share, but there's 2 or 3 that I can. One of my favorite ones, if you'll remember, Woody's teams, most of the time were really, really good defensively, at least for a while. And in 97, we're playing UT in Knoxville. I think it's Peyton Manning's senior day. And we lose to them in the last minute, 17-10. And when we go into midfield, I'm going over to shake Roger Frazier, UT's equipment manager's hand, and Woody and I are walking together, and he and Fulmer are meeting. And Fulmer goes, "Woody, your kids did a hell of a job." And Woody, Tom almost angrily told him, he said, "Yeah, Phil, if I had your players, I'd have beat you by 100. Which was terrific. I loved it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, he was good. And what's the other Woody is? I mean, there was another great Woody story. Let's see, I just had it on the tip of my tongue. Oh gosh, it's escaping me now. If I remember it, we'll go to it next week.
Did we ever tell the Dowhauer story on podcast?
Which one?
The preseason expectation story.
Oh, I don't know.
Andrew Carr told me that one, and
yeah.
The reason it was so funny was because Andrew was a walk-on, and that was like his first team meeting, and he just was coming out of it going, "Is this what is this what college football is?" Which kind of made it funnier when he told it to me. But you verified that one for me. Not that I distrusted Andrew. Andrew's a great dude, and he wouldn't lie. But it just was funny to hear you remember that one too.
Oh, no, it was, listen, and do we want to tell it? Have you told it before on the air?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think we might have told it on the pod before, but if we haven't, then it's a great story, and even if we had, it's probably worth the chance here for those who didn't hear it.
Okay, it's the preseason meeting. Everyone's in there, team, trainers, managers, everybody. Back then, you had the old overhead projector. So he's got this on the overhead. He's got the schedule. And all the lights are out. And he's got his little pinhook glasses down on his nose. And he goes, "All right, guys, we're going to talk about this schedule here. Here's what we got." And he started with it or whatever, North Texas. Hey, that's a W right there. We're going to win that one. Now, who's got Alabama? We got Georgia. We're going to try to keep them close. We ain't got no shot to win those. We're going to try to keep them close. I'm looking around the room. Everybody's looking around the room, craning their neck. Wait a minute. Is this a joke? Is he fixing to come out with a punchline? What are we doing? He goes through the entire schedule and does that. The players walk out. Their shoulders are slumped. It's so painful. You had to laugh about it. And I'm thinking, that's why Rod only made it 2 years. But you know how ironic? This is that story, but Chris, he had one of the best staffs, assistants that's ever been at Vanderbilt.
Who was on that staff? That's before I covered him.
Woody Woodenhofer, Ken Wisenhunt, Perry Fuel, Ron Aiken, Ed Lambert. I'm trying to think of who else was on it. But, an amazing staff. Mike Deal, an offensive line coach who was one of the top 5 I've seen there. Great staff. And Coach Wisenhunt shared with me, he said, Luke, Rod is a terrific coach on the field one-on-one with an individual position, whether it be wide receivers or quarterbacks. But when you put him in charge of something, it just overwhelms him. He can't handle it. And then obviously he couldn't.
Was he the worst football coach they had when you were there?
No question. It's not even close, hands down. I'll say this, and I'm not trying to be mean to Rod. Rod was fine with me, but he's one of the worst coaches we had in any sport there.
Who's the worst basketball coach in your association with them?
Worst basketball coach. Well, I'll tell you one that would have been a great coach, but got into some trouble outside. Let me say that first. Who got into some trouble outside?
I think I know where this is going. Go ahead.
Wayne Dobb.
Yep.
Did you know Wayne Dobb? Okay.
I did not. I know that story. Probably not. Well, I guess you can tell it if you want to, but
tell that. I don't want to get into that, but I would say a coach who would have done really well there, I think, was Coach Dobbs if he hadn't done some stuff outside of basketball. One of the worst coaches, worst decision makers ever was Richard Schmidt. Richard had an idea, and and you can't fault a guy for sticking to his philosophy, because he was very successful at Tampa, but at a different level, and he was very successful, I think, Louisville Ballard High School. But when he came to Vanderbilt, he thought he wanted to win games 49-48. And he would bench guys like Charles Davis and Mike Rhodes in favor of Ted Young and Jimmy Lynn. So, I'd have to put Richard Schmidt there as one of the worst at Vanderbilt.
Okay, go towards 94. What were the reasons Vanderbilt terminated Kevin Stallings, and where would the program be if he were still here?
Well, I think at that time, which, we just kind of talked about this, our expectations were to get to the NCAA and win games and at least be playing on the second weekend. And that's good. That's where your expectations should be. Kevin had been there 17 years, and I think it had kind of run its course. And people say, well, it's obviously a good choice because look what happened when he went to Pittsburgh. They didn't win a game the next year. So I don't know. And I love Kevin Stallings. I like Kevin. Don't get me wrong. He's a great guy. He's always good to me. Now, he got criticized for being pretty gruff at practices and using salty language a lot of times, but I know there's a ton of coaches that do that. But I just think it had run its course. That's why. 17 years is a long time to be a head coach somewhere.
If his personality is different, does he keep his job longer?
I don't know. And I would say no, because again, very few places do you see a guy make it more than 10 years. I either by age or success or non-success. Now, the great ones, of course, the Dean Smiths and the Shefskys and that type of thing, they make it a long time. But no, I don't think so. I don't. I think Kevin got through that. He was getting better as time went on, actually.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He had a meeting. I don't think we've ever talked about this. What I was told at the time, he had a meeting with David Williams after the season that went sideways in a hurry that I think involved Kevin saying something along the lines of, it's my program, you stay out of it. Was that true?
From what I understand, yes. I think you're not far off.
Was that the straw that broke the camel's back, or was it happening anyway?
I think it was happening anyway. I think Kevin knew it was happening anyway, and Kevin was just standing up for himself and was speaking honestly.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if we've got any more questions. We've got our questions thread kind of hijacked by Squabble, which that tends to happen when when bad losses occur. I've noticed it's funny. It's like everybody's in a great mood and nobody fights when teams win.
I know.
And then you throw in a Grambling and it just all goes to.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me scroll down. Boy, there's a lot of squabbling in here. There's a picture of two girls fighting. Here we go. Here's questions again. Great. Okay. What are your top two memories associated with Vanderbilt athletics? What are your two memories you'd most like to forget associated with Vanderbilt athletics? That is from Papa Hick 4VU.
Ooh, that's tough. Obviously, the greatest memories of the national championships in any sport. I was just excited for Jeff McDonald when he won the tennis national championship. He and Aliki Sabonis. Love that. I love John winning bowling. You know, people make fun of that, but hey, if you
John is a great dude, man. He is. I really like John Williamson so much.
Absolutely. Who else could say they played? Well, Corbin, I guess, played in 5 national championships. And then, of course, the 2 with Corbin, the 14. And to me, the best college baseball team I ever saw was the 2019 baseball team. So those national championships, you have to say. As far as the low ebb, there's a lot of low ebbs, unfortunately, over 40 years. I think losing to MTSU, one of those losses when we lost 2 in a row to them, I can't remember which one it was, but that was when we were so much better than them. I think it was Jay Cutler's year, and we tried moving Chris Nixon out to receiver and moved Jay out to receiver and Chris Nixon at quarterback, and it backfired on us, and they blocked the field goal at the end of the game. That was one of the lowest ebbs in football. Those blowout games, you know, like the Tennessee games and stuff like that, doesn't bother me because most of the time that's just because they've got more talent than you do. Basketball-wise, the tennis ball game, I know you've heard of that. I don't know if you were here for it, but
I was in the stands for that one, yeah.
And I'm not sure if Al Phillips' son was doing the scoreboard then, but I jokingly would say to him, "Man, you got to have a quick trigger finger because if they would have don't have such a quick trigger finger, because if they just let the clock expire, the game's over. There's no technical. But because there was 1 second left on the clock, the technical was called."
Yeah. I know who threw the tennis ball. I know the person who threw the tennis ball. I will not name names here, but I'm presuming you do as well.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that was the low ebb in basketball, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to me, and by the way, I think, 20 years is coming up in 2 weeks at the site. We may do a retrospective. Wow. And I didn't really know you till a few years ago, but just maybe walking back memory lane with your perspective on things could be interesting.
I would love to. I'll probably bore folks with so many stories, but I'd love to. That'd be fun.
I'm trying to decide if I want to do that or not. I think I'm going to. Maybe get a former partner on and maybe have a Seabass episode if I can get him back on. He's so busy, but like there's certain people that if you're going to do that, you have to do the story with those guys with you, and you would be certainly one of those. Again, even though I didn't know you for most of the time, I think that could be interesting. So,
be great. Love to.
Any parting thoughts as we end this lovely, upbeat, and positive episode.
No, let me just say this again. Let's go back to where my criticisms today coming forward saying I think you should go if we don't go to the NIT are all coming from where we stand right now. I hope that in 2 weeks I'm saying I'm glad we gave Stack the extension. But we're 5-5 right now. We shouldn't be 5-5. We should be better than that. And at the end of the season, if I'm sitting here and we're 14-18, and I say we should be better than that, then we should go a different direction.
I don't think I asked you this on podcast, but you don't. Well, what do you think his contract looks like, and what do you think the buyout looks like if you had an educated guess?
Oh, I'm just guessing here. It's not that much. I wouldn't think of a buyout. I do think the contract extension, and I have no proof of this at all. I'm just speculating, really. But just common sense would tell you that the buyout's not that much. And I would think this too. I think Jerry, if he feels like it, and I'm sure he doesn't because of his ego, if he feels like he can't get it done here, he needs to go back to the NBA, in my opinion. I don't think college, if this doesn't work out at Vanderbilt, I'm not sure college is where he should be. So, that's the only feelings I have on that.
Well, the issue with that is I don't think he's getting an NBA head coaching job anytime soon, and I think he would have to leave to be an assistant if he wanted to take that route.
That's what
I don't think he'll do that, though.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know, though. Playing in front of 3,000 to 5,000 people, and then when we play Kentucky and Tennessee in here, if it goes the way I think it's going to go, there's going to be 3,000 to 5,000. Used to be never did Memorial Gym get taken over. Even when Kentucky was at their best, they still didn't have the majority of fans in their Memorial. But that's changing now. And to me, when you lose your home court advantage in basketball, that's when you definitely have to make moves.
Yeah, I think optics, like if you have one of those games where they get beat by 30 and it's go big blue or go big orange the whole second half, that might be unless you're stacking a 9-9 season on that in the league, that might be one of those things that I wonder if, because I think that Kevin's game, Kevin Stallings, I got the feeling that Tennessee game in the SEC tournament was kind of the tipping point where they had that game won. Tennessee came back and beat them in the final seconds, and it wasn't a particularly good Tennessee team. I think that was Donnie Tyndall's only year. Like, sometimes you have one of those moments where, and it doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? If people aren't already frustrated, then that doesn't really move the needle there in terms of the coaching change. But that might be the other variable we didn't really discuss, is that attendance combined with an embarrassing moment, combined with the people have already had it already. And frankly, I think the Grambling game, judging by board, was a little bit of a tipping point for part of the fan base. You had some people that said, and some of them said it on the board, and some of them texted me, hey, I was with them until that.
Yeah, and listen, I'm still with him from the standpoint that I'm not going to cut people off at the knees after 10 games. No matter how bad. If we'd lost by 30 to Grambling, I still wouldn't. But what I'm saying is right now, where we are, it's not good enough. It's not. So do I still back him? Absolutely. I'm still going to go support the kids and hope that they win the rest of their games. But I understand people feeling that way. I absolutely do.
Yeah. Luke, thanks for joining us today. Always appreciate you being on, and we'll catch you again maybe next week. But by this time next week, I'm going to be in Colorado with my in-laws for 2 weeks. We are taking a road trip out there. We're leaving Friday. So I'll be driving 2 full days each way, probably, and then time in between. I'll bring my stuff, but it's also holidays, and so I'll probably be going on the fly there. But in any case, we will catch up with you again either next week or in the coming weeks, and Thank you, as always, for joining us.
You bet. We'll have a whole lot to talk about then.
Yeah, the NC State game will be interesting. I think if he gets that one, then okay, maybe this isn't a disaster. But if he loses that one, then it becomes that scenario where just finishing above 500 is very hard to fathom.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So,
Thank
okay,
you, Chris.
Luke, thanks a bunch. We'll see you soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode. We thank our presenting sponsor, Jody Jones DDS. We thank our other sponsors, Sutherland and Belk, Michael Kendrick of the Kendrick Group, and MyPerfectFranchise.net. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, and that's how we make this work, please email me at chrisley70@gmail.com. We also ask that you subscribe to our website, vandysports.com. That is $99 a year. You get things there that you don't get here. And of course, please rate, review, and subscribe where you see our podcast. That helps us get noticed. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at vandysports.com. Follow me at chrislee70. And finally, subscribe to our Vandy Sports YouTube channel as well. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast, which is part of the 440 Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. We'll catch you with another episode coming very soon.